Hey, 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 live from Denver. It's Friday night. Let's see here and make sure we're all good. Yes, we are. All right. And I see some of the usual suspects in the comments here. Welcome, critics.
Hey, everyone.
As you can see, I'm joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hey.
And, oh, we're a little off center. You can, yeah, anyway, whatever.
Right.
We're fine. Hi. Boy, we got a lot to go over tonight. So let's go ahead and get to it as everybody shows up and comes on in here. I want to, so many things. We are going to get to our Benson Cam and our quote of the week and all of that. But first, I wanted to sort of plug in or insert here a little section of the week of things I want to sort of quickly run down or run over or talk about. Just because I have a platform and a microphone and I get to do that. And if you want to hear it, you get to hear it. And if you don't, well, then fine, you don't have to. Lucy, I guess some complaining to do. No, not really. I mean, I actually want to validate the hell out of Apostate Alex right now for what he's doing in Paris. Boots on the ground, organizing protest there. Because I support what Alex is doing, and I support what Jeff Beaumont, PTS for Life, is doing, and I want to sort of clarify myself, maybe, admit to change, that sort of thing as well. I'm not trying to say I'm right about everything all the time, but I am gonna complain a little bit here for a moment about this protesting thing, because I have people come to my channel and tell me that I owe the protesters an apology because I'm so out of it. And if I really cared, I would get up off my ass and go do something about it. And after 10 years of doing this work right here on this microphone, interviewing people, spilling my guts, sharing my story, helping people one-on-one, I am sick and tired of people coming and lecturing me about how I'm not doing enough. These are people who have no concept of who they are talking to or what I have been up to. And I'm not even putting myself on some pedestal like I'm better than everybody else. Just know who you're talking to, right? 10 years. It's very, very annoying to be lectured at by people who just found out about Scientology, about how little I'm doing about it. So
and
anybody,
like a lot of them were never ends, right?
Yeah, and these are people who have no concept of what any of this is even about.
Yeah.
So that gets real old real fast, and I'm just going to put that out there. Now, having said that and gotten that off my chest, I do want to, and I've always wanted to, validate and be happy with and congratulatory of and promoting and supporting protests that I think of as constructive, productive activities, which is why all the way back to last year, before any of this even really started happening, I was supporting Alex and arguing with other people in this space about the need and goodness of what he was doing there. And yet I have some critical words about people yelling and screaming obscenities at Sea Org members, because that's bullshit to do. You just don't do that to other human beings, period, much less cult members, and expect that you think you're the good guy. That's not being the good guy.
Well, and it doesn't work.
Exactly my point, because it doesn't work. All it does is make them more cult members and make people around you think you're a moron. So that still happens to this day. Right now, today, that's happening. And the people who do that not only didn't want to talk to me, publicly humiliated me for reaching out to them. This guy, William. So I'm supposed to be impressed by that? I'm supposed to apologize to these people for that? I don't think so. I don't think so. Ugh. Enough about that. I support 100% peaceful, rational, good, well-organized protests, not TikTok click on me and send me super chats every 3 seconds.
Yep.
That's not what this is about. This is about helping people, and it's about helping people in the cult, and it's about helping people get out of it. And if you can't see that, then you're just not part of the solution. You're part of the problem. And you might think you're part of the solution, but if you're not working at helping people, you're not. And it's possible to help people in and out at the same time. That's why I support Alex. That's why I support PTS for Life and Jeff and what he does. That's the kind of thing I want to see a lot more of. That's why I encourage it. I have been grossly misrepresented and mischaracterized on these issues. But I also have not been as, like, okay, look, here's where it's at. So let me just put that out there, okay? Really, really makes me mad to be lectured at by people who have no idea what they are talking about. And anybody, any of you out there who have been working at anything for 10 straight years every day would feel exactly the same way. Don't come at me and lecture me. Just, dare I say you don't have the rank.
I mean, you have the degree.
Yeah, it's just not necessary, right? Look at my channel, look at my body of work, look at what I do. Criticize any of that as much as you want, rationally, skeptically, bring it, right? But don't tell me I'm not active and I don't work in this space. Okay. Parasorg, by the way, I am very excited about this protest and this opening and what's going to happen there. We might see a Tom Cruise sighting, by the way. And yeah, we'll have to see what happens with Alex on this, but I am very excited for him with that. And I wanted to also put in another plug because it is, what is it? It's April 5th now?
Yeah.
5th? Okay, so May 11th in Portland. I'm going to be there. A lot of people are going to be there to have a ex-cult recovery workshop, Safe Portland. And so check that date, check that time. If you can show up there, that'd be awesome. It's not a virtual live event or anything like that. It's really just in person. It's about healing and recovery and hearing and education and listening and that kind of thing. And I get to do a talk there, so that'll be fun. And I'll finally get to meet some of these folks that I'm sitting here talking about and validating so heavily. I am very, very, very much looking forward to that. So that'll be fun. Okay, so thank you guys for your wonderful comments there. I appreciate it very much. This has been trying times, and I think we're starting to get to the end of it. I want to also just sort of put this out there, and yes, my tongue is in my cheek when I say this. This is the part I'm not upset about. I'm actually just, I think it's hilarious. I have a fan club out there. I am happy that people think I am well enough known and, I don't know, in a position that I need to be shot down from. Like, that's an acknowledgement. And I'm going to choose to look at it that way, right? There are people out there who make, all these videos about me, and I just can't stop thinking how hilarious that is. It is really funny because it actually helps drive people to my channel and check out my work and find out about me and find out that I'm not any of the things that these people characterize me as. Nope. And that's great. So thank you. Please continue. All right. So there's that. All right. So let's go ahead and now that my beginning of the week rant is over, did you have anything, baby, that you wanted to rant about in this section? I totally am springing this on her.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish people would grow up a little bit.
Yeah, there is that. There is that. Okay.
But we constantly live in high school.
Yes, we do. Don't we? It's kind of like Mean Girls and Mean Boys, like for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. I didn't think that was supposed to be for the rest of my life, All right. So... let us do let's check in on our snuggles, not struggles, Cam. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do that first. So there is our little bundle of furry joy. staring up at Mel there. She's the one who got the Benson cam today.
He's just so cute.
Yes, he
His
is.
big old fluffy ears.
Yes. And he feels, I'm going to say this while we're watching this week, because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but he really feels like he's more communicative now. Or maybe we're picking up on his vibes better, or signals or whatever, noticing these things.
Feels more connected to us.
Doesn't he? Doesn't he? He feels like he's more in touch, like he can look and make little motions, and he'll paw at me and you, and he'll do little things that very, very, very much tell us that he has, wants to go outside, or he wants to eat, or he wants to do this or that, or play, all these things. And he's just a smart little cookie sometimes,
Yeah,
so,
we taught him how to do some tricks.
That's right.
Some tricks, like shake.
Right. And he's going to have a little play date tomorrow, so we're looking forward
Sunday,
to
but
that.
yeah.
Sunday, yes. All right. And then did you have a quote for the show here? We're going to kick off our main section now.
This is a quote about ADHD, because that's our topic. Picture a room with 1,000 TVs, with each TV showing something different. Now try and concentrate on just one TV without getting distracted. That's ADHD.
Yes. Yes.
Or at least one aspect of it anyway.
Yeah. Wow. Well, ADHD. Okay, let's talk about this. This is something I have been diagnosed with. It's something you have been diagnosed with. We are speaking from experience with this, as well as I have papers. I have prepared facts on papers here for us to review this week about this, because I wanted to talk seriously about it. And I am not a medical professional, and I am not pretending to be. I am not a doctor. I do not play a doctor on TV. My expertise is in coercive control, not mental health issues or personality disorders as such, only to the degree that I have studied therapy and treatment modalities in treating coercive control and the effects of it. Do I understand that side of things, right? I've always said I'm not a therapist, and I'm not pretending to be. But as somebody who experiences and has grown up with and lived with ADHD my entire life, I have a few things to say about that. And I thought my beautiful wife, Melissa, might as well tonight. So I thought we might go over some of this, how it relates to cults and manipulative behavior. And I wanted to head this off by saying that this is not about, no part of tonight's show is an effort to try to stigmatize or somehow make less of the condition. It simply is what it is. It's part of, your brain anatomy and neuro behavior that is different from the average or the norm. I still have yet to meet Mr. Average or Mrs. Average, by the way. I'm not really sure,
who is that?
Who that person is, right? But I'm sorry about that, OBG Foster. I'm sorry you had to experience that. So anyway, not stigmatizing this condition, okay? What I'm trying to do is maybe clarify and help people understand that this condition has a set of issues unique to it that make or help people, predators, to perhaps take advantage of people with ADHD in ways that make it a little easier, a little different than how they might approach your more average person, or how the experience of being in a manipulative, coercive environment can be a little bit of a different experience for someone with ADHD versus a neurotypical. It's horrible no matter what. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. This isn't a trauma Olympics thing where people with ADHD have it harder. I'm trying to point out some differences, some interesting points about it. So let's talk about this. First off, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by persistent patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity.
And hyperactivity doesn't just mean woo. It's also what's going on in your brain. Like if you're inattentive ADHD, the hyperactivity is happening here all the time. It may not be expressed outwards, but you may be daydreaming constantly, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It is kind of always going, right? And that's literally the terminology, right? ADHD. So, inattention symptoms may manifest as difficulty sustaining focus, being easily distracted, which I'm sure none of you have ever noticed with me at all.
I don't know. I don't know. Just
Forgetfulness.
definitely have that.
And trouble
Both
organizing tasks.
Yes.
Hyperactivity symptoms include fidgeting, restlessness, and difficulty staying seated. Impulsivity.
I'm very fidgety.
Oh, Henny has a quick question here, and I'm going to say it's a question really for a professional. With all the many different types of how people think, how can someone know what they have? Many mental health overlap, Chris. Yes, things do overlap, and yes, people can have more than one disorder or condition at a time. This is absolute fact. People are complicated. We are. This is the most complicated machine that we are aware of in the entire universe. Literally, the brain, and there's a lot going on in it. And there's a ton of research and study that has been done that is giving us all kinds of answers, but we are still in baby steps. We just are, right? Even with all the stuff we're learning, it's still all new.
But yeah, definitely overlap. I mean, there's a really, I forgot what the exact percentage is, but there is a really high percentage of people that have both ADHD and autism. It's huge. And there's things that are similar about both of them and some overlap, and then some ways that they really go different, which can make you crazy if you have both of them, I'm sure.
Well, exactly. And so what I would suggest, Henny, since you mentioned they're having some of these symptoms, is speak with a professional. Talk with a therapist or a psychiatrist. There's a lot of information that they get from you. It's not a 5-minute analysis. The symptomology is pretty specific, but it's really a matter of talking about your childhood, your developmental years, your teenage years, and your adult life in order to really get across to, whoever that's what they need in order to be able to do an accurate diagnosis of it.
Well, and you had to fill out some survey. I had to fill out some survey questionnaire things about myself, how to do all this stuff he just said. Plus, I went to a testing center where they did stuff like memory tests and focus tests and all this other stuff. So I definitely went through a process.
Exactly. Okay, so there are these symptoms to it, right? And these things are real. And I know a lot of people who do not have this condition will look at it from their perspective. When they get distracted, when they forget things, when they're inattentive, and their brains operate in such a way that they're able to exert more control over themselves and more easily discipline themselves to deal with those problems or challenges. And the whole point of the ADHD brain is it's not so prepared to do that, and it takes a great deal more, not just self-discipline, but we'll get into, to deal with, okay? ADHD is typically diagnosed in childhood, often around the age of 7, but symptoms may persist into adolescence and adulthood. While the exact cause of ADHD is not fully understood, factors such as genetics, brain structure and function, and environmental influences are believed to play a role. Right? It's nature and nurture, in other words. It's not necessarily something that you're just born with. It may well be that there are genes that activate, like there are with other mental health conditions, under certain stressors or under certain environmental conditions. We know this for a fact that this happens.
They suspect moms who smoke while pregnant can kind of trigger the ADHD sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, they have more to learn about that, but that is one of their suspicions, which would make sense. My mom smoked while she was pregnant.
Well, there you go. Mine did not, but there could be factors, right? Okay, in terms of the brain thing, I wanted to go over this very quickly just to be complete about this, because I really want this understood. Since we're talking about it in this show here, I want to really go over this stuff because it is different. Neurotypical brains and ADHD brains differ in several key areas of functioning. Neurotransmitter activity, this is measurable. They've done research and studies on this, and they've got how it works. Neurotypical brains maintain a balance of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which are involved in regulating attention, focus, and impulse control. In ADHD brains, there may be imbalances in these neurotransmitters contributing to difficulties in attention regulation and impulse control. If you've ever heard about a chemical imbalance in your brain, these are the chemicals we're talking about. And it's not that this is necessarily a causative element. It could just be something that correlates or is part of the behavior or part of the activity up here. It's not necessarily like this is the thing. There could be other factors, but this happens. This is measurable.
Well, it's like with the type 1 diabetes, it's not your pancreas that starts the chain of events. It's your autoimmune system. And we just haven't, I think, with mental illness, figured out what the trigger is. Like, you know, with like I said, with diabetes, like the autoimmune system gets triggered by something and then it attacks the cells in your pancreas. Well, maybe that's what's going on with your brain, is like something gets triggered, lowers your dopamine and all the other ones, and we just don't know what that trigger is yet.
Exactly. All right, Juliana, see you on the replay.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we have neurotransmitter differences, and those are not just little chemicals in the brain. It's actually quite amazing how even one or two pathways in your brain can cause incredible differences in our behavior. There was a podcast I was listening to recently with David Eagleman and a neuropsychiatrist, where they talked about how they accidentally discovered by stimulating one pathway in a brain that the person became depressed. Just like that, right? Like, boom, depression response. And then that had to, go ahead. Then that had to, then they stopped signaling that pathway, that one pathway. Just hit the,
No, I can't. Where's the mouse?
Sorry about that.
There it is.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Anyway, then they stopped stimulating that one pathway. The person didn't feel depressed again, right? Then they did it again. It's one pathway. It really can be that specific upstairs. Prefrontal cortex activity, right? Up in here. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions, such as planning, organizing, and decision-making, tends to operate efficiently in neurotypical brains. However, individuals with ADHD may exhibit underactivity in the prefrontal cortex, leading to challenges in these executive functions. And this is kind of all up in here too. Then there is differences in brain structure itself, including variations in the size and connectivity of certain brain regions, have been observed in individuals with ADHD compared to neurotypical individuals. These structural differences may contribute to the cognitive and behavioral differences. So those are three physical manifestations, you could say, or indications of an ADHD brain. So how does this affect people being recruited into or members of destructive cults or coercive environments? Let's take a look. So we talked about attention deficit, right? AD, attention deficit disorder. Individuals with ADHD often struggle with maintaining attention and focus, especially in situations that are not inherently stimulating or engaging.
Now, it's funny because, like, I think the average person or neurotypical person is like, they get bored sometimes, but they don't really fully understand. Like, it's torture to be bored as someone with ADHD, and that sounds really like whiny, but it's awful, and
It can get
and it
pretty
leads to us doing stuff that's not so good sometimes.
Exactly. So coercive environments such as destructive cults often rely on lengthy indoctrination sessions, repetitive rituals, and intense emotional manipulation to exert control over members. For individuals with ADHD, sustaining attention during these sessions can be particularly challenging, making them more vulnerable to manipulation and indoctrination because of the next point, impulsivity. Right? You're there, you're getting bored, it's not really that stimulating, but you keep being told how awesome and wonderful it is. Okay, just to end the boredom, I'll sign up, right? Like that could be a thing that an ADHD person might do that a non-ADHD person wouldn't do. And they'll be judged for that. Oh, you're impulsive, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. It's just how their brain is working. Impulsivity, right? A core feature of ADHD involves acting without fully considering the consequences of one's actions. In coercive environments, individuals may be pressured to make impulsive decisions. They are all the time. And there were people who were more susceptible to the charms of registrars than others. I think this is one of the factors as to why. Right? Some people you'd have to reg for hours, right? Do the sales, the Scientology sales stuff, right? Other people, after an hour, they were like, okay, fine, take my credit card, right? They just want it to end.
And also it's like a lot of people with ADHD get into spending money because there's that dopamine hit when you go spend money. So that's like a great way to get you into a cult and spend money because you're like, ooh, I like spending money and I get things for spending this money.
Exactly. The reward system is immediate, right?
Yep.
The heightened emotional arousal and social pressures present in cult environments can exacerbate impulsivity in individuals with ADHD, making them more susceptible to recruitment tactics that exploit their vulnerabilities. Definitely, definitely. Now, I never once even thought of ADHD as a factor in recruiting people into Scientology because we didn't even believe this stuff existed when I was in Scientology. This was all just psych gobbledygook. But looking back on it, you see how we categorize people by easy sales or easier marks than other people who were harder to deal with. And remember a few weeks ago, I think we talked about the big league sales closing techniques and how Scientology utilizes this idea of different types of personalities that you close in different ways, the unattached female versus the professional buyer and this kind of thing. And that's how we categorize them. But this has something to do with that categorization, I believe. Another factor with people with ADHD is emotional vulnerability. This was interesting to me. This was particularly interesting given all the work I'd been doing over the last many years on the subject of emotions and really diving deep on trying to understand what they're about. Individuals with ADHD often experience heightened emotional sensitivity and vulnerability, which can be manipulated by coercive groups to foster dependency and allegiance. And it occurred to me in reading about this today that maybe inadvertently, unknowingly, because I am a person who has ADHD and has experienced emotional vulnerability in all kinds of ways, and you've heard me go on for years about the whole saving the world thing and all that as an example, that perhaps because of that condition and because that was such an emotional thing for me that I might be projecting that on other people, right? I wanted to say that out loud, is everybody doesn't necessarily have the same experience I had with all of that emotional stuff in Scientology, but boy, did I meet a lot of people who did. I mean, it's not like I was only talking about myself in all of that. But I just wanted to point that out, kind of highlight that maybe not everybody in Scientology has that whole emotional, thing go on. I think maybe as hard as those of us who had ADHD do. Cult leaders may exploit individuals' emotional vulnerabilities by offering them a sense of belonging, acceptance, and purpose that they may feel is lacking in their lives. And again, right, save the world, biggest purpose you could have. Okay. And then, of course, the fact that because cults specifically, and especially Scientology, do work so hard on intense emotional experiences, whether it's through, rebirth process or a Dianetic session or, 8 hours of chanting and hopping around doing your meditation like they do in TM. No matter what it is, they are trying to create intense emotional experiences. That's for sure. And those cultivated within cult environments can further exacerbate the emotional dysregulation in individuals with ADHD, making it harder for them to actually critically evaluate their involvement and consider alternatives.
Well, and with the going back to the boredom and impulsivity stuff, that just goes right. It's something to do. Oh my God, they're giving me new things to do, and it's exciting. And
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, OBG Foster, in terms of, meditating or doing whatever it is you're going to do in order to find some mindfulness or peacefulness or whatever in your life that you're looking for. I don't particularly have a problem with that, but you got to understand we're talking about in cult environments where they ratchet it up to 11 100% of the time. It's always not just sitting down and doing TRs for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It's 2 hours straight with no blink, this kind of nonsense. So I think that's kind of what I'm referring to more as with this. Now, this was an interesting one to me. I was not actually fully cognizant of this one. And I wanted to see what y'all thought about this as well, which is difficulty questioning authority. That's interesting. Coercive environments often rely on strict hierarchies and charismatic authority figures to maintain control over members. Individuals with ADHD may struggle with authority figures and rules, but they may also have difficulty questioning or challenging authority, especially in environments where dissent is discouraged or punished. And that is literally one of the characteristics of destructive cults, is that dissent is punished. You don't get to disagree. It's our way or the highway. And people with ADHD can have a real problem trying to talk back, fight back, or even hold their place. And this leads immediately to identity issues when you're in a cult, because how good of a cult member you are literally defines your own value to yourself. So if you're not a good cult member, you're a worthless scumbag in your own eyes. And this, and this can, anyway, you get all the consequences of that. In fact, this difficulty in asserting independence or questioning the group's beliefs can lead individuals with ADHD to become more deeply entrenched in the cult's ideology and practices, despite underlying doubts or concerns. As contradictory as that sounds, that when we talk about cognitive dissonance, well, people with ADHD, this is the nature of some of their cognitive dissonances. They got to resolve this stuff. And when they resolve it in the direction of the cult is right, the cult is good, the cult is all, and my doubts and my questioning are unimportant, insignificant, and so am I, then they can easily resolve to be a better cult member, stick to it harder, that kind of thing. And they're more easily taken advantage of that way.
We've got Alex in the chat.
Oh, Alex, dude, from Paris. I was just talking about you earlier. Welcome to the show. All right. International man of mystery. Speaking French in the comments. Okay, and then we have, then this is the last characteristic I wanted to go over here of problems, how ADHD affects people in this, is rejection of external criticism. This is another one of these interesting ones. It's not obvious. Cults often isolate members from external influences and criticism, fostering an us versus them mentality, as we know. Individuals with ADHD may be particularly susceptible to this dynamic, as they may already feel marginalized or misunderstood by mainstream society. I mean, I sure did.
I definitely did.
Right? And the cult's narrative of persecution and exclusivity may resonate with individuals with ADHD, reinforcing their sense of identity and belonging within the group, while further alienating them from external sources of support. or dissent. So, ADHD, it's fun. All right. Now, how does ADHD affect someone's ability in terms of recovery? What are we looking at in terms of problems or issues that might pose themselves that might not be, some might be obvious and some may be not so obvious? Well, first off is emotional dysregulation. People with ADHD often struggle emotionally, right, with regulating their emotions and their emotional life, experiencing intense and fluctuating emotions that can be difficult to manage. And we're not talking about full-blown bipolar, but we are certainly talking about ups and downs that can be incredibly confusing and very difficult to manage on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour even basis. And I can definitely speak from personal experience on that. I am sometimes a completely different person, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this, in the afternoon than I am in the morning.
Yep.
Than I am in the evening,
Me too.
right? So emotional regulation, emotional volatility can complicate the recovery process by making it harder for individuals to regulate their emotions during therapy sessions or when reflecting on their experiences of abuse. And I will tell you straight up that for the first 2 years, I could not talk off camera. I could keep my shit together when I was on camera, and I could talk with purpose and intention about what I was trying to talk about on video because I had a message I wanted to get across, and that was important to me. But off camera, if you started talking to me about what happened, how it happened, what was done to me, oh man, I could get really upset. much more so than when I was on camera. Anyway, so that was definitely an issue with that. And it can be challenging as well to process traumatic memories and emotions, and that can also get a bit in the way in therapy too. It just does. It's just one of those things you got to deal with. Now, the other factor that we talked about already is difficulty focusing. Yeah. And here I am talking about education all the time. And you got to focus to get educated. Even if you're doing it in 5-minute spurts, you still got to give it 5 minutes. You got to get it your whole attention, right? And thinking and is hard. Education, learning is where your brain really goes into overdrive in terms of burning through the calories. And your brain is already using, 20% of your body budget of energy is going to just power this thing, and you start really applying yourself and really getting active with that, and it tires you out.
Well, and a common thing with ADHD people is reading can be very difficult because you start reading and then your mind starts wandering and you get a page or two in and you're like, I don't even know, I just read for 2 pages. And then you have to go back, read it again, hope your focus stays this time. And it can be very frustrating. So that's getting a lot of recovery stuff comes from having to read. And that could be difficult.
Big time. Let us take a quick commercial break to let everybody know, because I definitely want to support this, that breaking news, I'm going to read this out loud. Alex will be streaming live from Paris at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Paris Org is opening tomorrow, and we will see. Yes, I am quite sure Miscavige will be there. And so I wanted to put in a plug for that. Oh, yes. Oh, my God. I keep forgetting. I have forgotten to show you guys my Captain Davy for weeks now. I've had this thing. Not sure what exactly to do with it, but it's here. So
Poke it with needles.
Yeah, right. Voodoo doll, Captain Dave. Also, Alex had an interesting comment here when he said, "That's interesting, Chris. I instinctively have my TRs in all the time. And was a hard thing for me to realize the emotional impact of recounting the past had on me." Yeah, I get that, Alex. That makes sense. Oh, good, Alex. He's got his Captain Davy with him in Paris as well. So So at least we'll have Captain Miscavige Davy there for the opening. All right, let's get back to our commercial or non-commercial messaging here. So we talked about focusing. Okay, impulsivity. This is something that definitely will get in your goddamn road when you're trying to recover. No question about it. Because we impulsively, and by this, of course, we mean, impulsively making bad decisions for yourself. Spending money you shouldn't, having a relationship you shouldn't, doing stuff, you know how it,
well,
you know what I'm talking
about. With people with ADHD that develop addictions, it's hard to recover for them because that impulsivity, man, you're like, you don't even think about it sometimes when you're doing this stupid stuff. Like, you don't even realize that you're doing it. All of a sudden, you're drinking again, and you're just like, wait, I didn't even have a thought process about this. Someone just offered me a drink, and I said, yes.
Yeah, it can be weird. It can be really weird.
Yeah.
And it's weird because when you have this condition and you think this is how everybody is, life is weird.
Yeah.
Until you learn about this and you realize just like how different this can be for people, you get really weird ideas about trying to explain what these differences are about. We're lazy, we're dumb, we're stupid, we're, all these things that we're not. I can't tell you how many years I labored under this really, really misbegotten notion that I was basically a really lazy guy. You've seen how much work I do. So it's a little weird, right? All right. So impulsivity can manifest in various ways, such as making impulsive decisions that undermine progress, such as abruptly discontinuing therapy or engaging in self-destructive behaviors as a means of coping with distressing emotions. And we all know what that looks like.
Check.
Yes. They can also, and this also is really important to understand because we talk about this phenomenon of cult hopping. And I know for a fact, at least, I can't say 100% for sure, but I've not ever seen any literature or studies done on this exact point, but it should be done. And that is that impulsivity can lead individuals to re-enter abusive relationships or environments without fully assessing the risks or considering healthier alternatives. And that could very well underlie some of the high statistic cult hopping that we sometimes talk about or see. I've seen studies as high as 75% of people have some degree of recidivism or fall back into some other group or cult or go back to their original one. I think that's a little high. That seems unusually high to me. But the fact that it's a problem is inarguable. People cult hop. They come out of one situation and they go into another, and ADHD can exacerbate that tendency. That's just something to know. Right? Because it's something to pay attention to if you have that condition. Also, executive functioning challenges, right? ADHD is associated with deficits in executive functioning, like the overall umbrella. Let's manifest. Let's what's the word? Coordinate all these activities in the brain, right?
Right. Which leads to things that people call laziness, but it's this thing we were reading last night about it, where it said it's. Executive dysfunction isn't like not wanting to do something. It's you can't want to do it. Meaning like no matter how hard you try, you cannot make yourself want to do it. And your body and your brain are like, we're not doing that. Sorry.
That's right. I can't tell you how frustrating it is because I just don't have the words for it. I really don't. And I usually have words for stuff. But when I want to sit and write or research or study or do what I do, and I just can't do it. Frustration doesn't even begin to describe that feeling. But you literally just can't. It's a very weird thing. You gotta wait, and that's what I mean sometimes when I say, I gotta wait for that mood to hit me. I gotta wait for that like time when I'm on.
Yeah.
Right?
The hyper focus.
Yeah. And then sometimes, that hyper focus comes in, but sometimes it comes in on stuff you don't want to be hyper focused on.
Right. Or it gets dangerous where you're like hyper focused on something and then you're like, wait, 6 hours have passed.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. I think this has a lot to do, by the way, with the social media problem out there, and people becoming like addicted to their social media and spending hours and hours on it, not even realizing it. I think ADHD could be a component there.
Oh yeah, and our desire to argue.
Yeah. So executive functions can hinder the deficits in that can hinder a person's ability to engage in the practical aspects of recovery, such as setting and working towards goals, implementing coping strategies, and navigating logistical challenges like accessing support services. And this is really, really one of the best examples of where the problem prevents the cure or solution. Because here you are trying so hard to recover, to work at this, to put some discipline in, to go through these motions and get through this stuff, and your brain just isn't cooperating with you. And then it looks like you're an asshole, and you're not. You truly want to do this thing, but your brain sometimes, some days, some moments is just like, yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah, screw you.
And it's your brain, you know. And
what
part of
do?
you is like, I want to, and the other part is like, yeah, no, not right now. Also, without adequate executive functioning skills, individuals may feel overwhelmed by the demands of the recovery process and struggle to make meaningful progress. So that can also set you up for failure in giving yourself goals that may be too big, too high, because they're great for neurotypicals, but for somebody with ADHD, I need that broken down into smaller bite-sized chunks. I'm sorry, I just do.
Yeah.
You know? And we need to process that differently. Not that we can't go through the same processes and get the same results and recover, but the process of navigating those difficulties can make it more challenging, and that needs to be recognized and acknowledged for what it is.
Right. We need to recognize that in education, that people with things like ADHD need a different type of education than the traditional type. They need smaller chunks at a time. Like you said, they need it to be stimulating. They need it to be in smaller chunks. You got to do like more switching up. You know, you can't just do 8 hours straight of the same thing with ADHD. So you got to like switch it up. Let's do, you know, a little bit of this here, and then midday we'll do that, and afternoon we'll do that, you know?
Exactly. Well, exactly. You have to format it differently, right? It's not that they can't do it. It's not that they can't navigate it, but how do we do that? Did you see this question from Polar Vortex there about introverts and extroverts? I am not familiar with the answer on that one. Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure, because I think there's really both. I mean, I'm pretty introverted, but I definitely have ADHD. I mean, I fit so many of the things, but I'm not as extroverted as some other ADHD people I know who are super extroverted, you know? So it's just, I think it kind of varies. I'm not sure if that's
I would say so too.
Sure, yeah.
I think they're different areas, but I just don't know. So I'm just going to say that. Best to just be straight up on that one. All right. So, last bit here, stigma and shame. Individuals with ADHD may experience stigma and misconceptions surrounding their condition, both within the society at large and within therapeutic settings. I wish every therapist understood and knew all this stuff, even now. Even now. The stigma can exacerbate feelings of shame and self-blame, potentially hindering individuals from seeking help or fully engaging in the recovery process. Okay. So also, people with ADHD may internalize negative beliefs about themselves, such as feeling inherently flawed or unworthy of support, which can impede their ability to heal from abuse and develop a positive sense of self. I can absolutely speak to that. You guys know that I have had, you know, my ups and downs over these years. And the negative self-talk, you know, so much of what I talk about here on this show is me talking in a mirror about certain things like negative feedback loops and negative self-imaging and the way that we get on ourselves. ADHD makes that worse and makes it harder to overcome it. Not impossible. None of this, again, is about how impossible it is to have this condition. It's just recognizing the challenges of it and recognizing the symptoms of it. So that when you know people who have this condition or have this situation, and it is a spectrum, right? There are people who have some or a lot. But when you are dealing with somebody who has this, they are not the same. And they have things about them that you have to just understand about them and not assign dumb labels to them, like how lazy and stupid and ignorant and everything else they are, right? Because we jump to those things so quickly, lacking the understanding of something we can't see. You can't look at somebody else's brain,
Nope.
right? When you're looking at them.
Yeah.
Go,
it's not obvious. Yeah.
It's completely unobvious. And this is one of the biggest problems with mental health versus physical health. They're really both the same, if we're being honest. It's all physical. But when we differentiate these things, right, we're talking about broken bones versus brain problems. It's real obvious when somebody's arm is broken and nobody expects them to write with their hand when their arm is broken. But people expect you to do everything completely normally when your brain's broken. And it's very, very, very frustrating for those of us who have those problems and challenges.
Yes.
Add to that an occult environment and an authoritarian situation and people manipulating and taking advantage of you. And man, is this going to mess with your emotional life and with your self-image intensely. And it is very, very possible and necessary to overcome all that messing around and trauma. It's very, very possible to be more resilient, as we went over, I think, last week about some of this stuff. But you got to recognize what you're dealing with. And that then that's sort of the raw materials of ADHD people versus non-ADHD people, kind of different, right? It's not just another thing you check off. Oh, okay, he's got ADHD. It's like, oh, no. There's something important to know about this. And I just wanted to share some of that tonight and hope that it helps.
And it's not all bad. I mean, people with ADHD tend to also have intense amounts of creativity because of the way their brains are wired and because they're just constantly have their brain firing all kinds of crazy stuff all the time. Like we tend to be super creative. So that's a good thing, you know? Like we could really entertain ourselves. We really learn how to keep ourselves from being too bored, you know?
Well, let me share something with you in terms of how this became a helpful thing for me also. I've been talking an awful lot tonight about all the negatives of this, but let me share a positive of this that I believe was from my ADHD, and that is when I was on the RPF in the Sea Org, the Rehabilitation Project Force. Right? I spent 3 years on that program. And during that time, one of the ways that I would entertain myself and others when we were out on decks doing the hard physical labor that we were doing, sometimes it was not so hard physical labor. Sometimes it was just cleaning the showers and shit like that. It was just grunt work. I would entertain my little unit. We would work in units of about 4 or 5 people. There would be an in charge, and there would be like three to 5 people who would be assigned to a project, and you had a specific set of orders to do, and you'd go get those done. And this was every single day. And while we were off doing some of the more menial, repetitive type work, or the stuff you didn't have to think about too much, I would entertain the unit by recounting a movie from beginning to end. The entire story, scene by scene, not necessarily going through all the dialogue word for word, because I'm not that good. But I knew a lot of movies. I grew up with a movie guy, and I often read the books from the movies that I loved the most, and sometimes I'd read them more than once. All the way back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Jaws in the 70s. I was reading Jaws, Peter Benchley, like hardcore adult stuff, right? Anyway, so I really remembered these stories, and I would tell the movie, right, while we were out on decks. And I just think this was part of it, to pass the time and keep it interesting and keep myself from going literally insane with the boredom and monotony of the experience. And I found a way to have a creative outlet in the middle of the RPF, as humans will do in dire, horrible circumstances universally around the world. That was how I dealt with it, right? It was one of the ways, one of the coping mechanisms was that. And I never even really thought about that too much until you were just talking about that. All right. Well, I think we're going to start wrapping up the show here.
All right.
Notice we did not do calls tonight, and I'm probably going to do a little shift. I'm not going to take that component out of the show. That was the whole point of the show in the first place. But I'll probably start setting up the phone call in the later half of the show, because otherwise I'm just burning through phone minutes. And we would set it up and start the calls at the beginning of the show, but then we're not taking them till the end. Anyway, basically all I'm saying is I was burning through money that I didn't need to. So we're probably going to make some changes in regards to that. But otherwise, y'all let me know what you think about the show and how I might improve on it, or what else you might like to see in this. I'm always open to suggestions and stuff. Even if I totally disagree with them and blow them off, I'll still want you to make them to me. So please do throw that my way. Okay, so for tomorrow, you guys are getting a podcast of me sitting here talking at you about coercive control and how to stop it, what to do, what you can do about it. I thought it was time for the Speaking of Cults podcast to finally do, the What is Coercive Control episode. So that'll be showing tomorrow, and I hope you guys will check that out. It's pretty short and sweet. And I thought I did a pretty good job overall.
Yeah.
No, we won't be taking calls this week because we're wrapping up right now. I just gabbered on at a mad rate for the whole thing. So, sorry about that this week. And let's see, we're going to do our regular Q&A on Sunday. As you may have noticed, that time has crept up to 1 o'clock my time. That gives me Sunday morning off, so I can do whatever on Sunday morning. So we'll be Sunday live, 1 o'clock. You notice this show is pretty live. Probably the weekends when I go off to do events or something, I will do a pre-recorded. But otherwise, be pretty live.
Yeah.
I love doing live Q&A. And often we've been going more than an hour on that too. Remember something, when I first started doing the Q&A show, it was a half hour.
That's right.
Yeah, now it's like an hour and a half. So you guys are really getting a good one from me on that one every week. So I hope you guys will check that out. I heard about that earthquake, Kenny.
Yes.
I heard everything was pretty okay. It wasn't like devastating, but sorry about that earthquake.
Yeah, earthquake in the East Coast.
Felt the earth move under your feet. Exactly. Having grown up in California, I can relate. And we don't get that here in Denver, but boy, I had a few in California that were.
Sure.
Actually, I'm going to share this story with you. I'm totally going to do this. We're gonna. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, this will be quick.
Yeah.
Just because it's earthquake.
Right.
Okay. California, Celebrity Center. I was on training at Celebrity Center. I think this was 1987, 88 time period. There was a big earthquake in Los Angeles at that time. You can look it up. I was at the Celebrity Center while it was being renovated. They had not built it up to the beautiful building it is now. It was still kind of a crappy building. And I was there for supervisor training over at the PAC base, but we were staying over at CC in these dorm kind of rooms. And I was in bed, 17 or 18 years old. I think it was 18 at this. Yeah, I was 18. I don't normally do this, but for whatever reason, I was stark naked in bed. I think it was because it was summer and it was hot. And this earthquake hit. And Cece is rocking. And I wake up to the earthquake going, and without any thought whatsoever, with only a sheet around me, and I didn't even really think about it, I just leapt out of bed with the sheet still on me, ran down the hall to the stairs, and was one flight down the stairs before a single thought occurred to me. And the first thought I had was, wait a minute, I'm naked. Maybe I shouldn't run outside right now. And I spent the last of the bits of the earthquake standing in the stairwell of Celebrity Center, wondering if I was going to die or whether I should run outside and die of embarrassment. Seriously. And
Jesus.
had that been a worse earthquake or something horrible happened, embarrassment would have literally been the death of me. Anyway, I just
You were still there in like, what was it, 92 or something when there was a really bad one in LA?
I was also down there or around that area for that too. Yeah. Yeah, good times, folks. Good times.
All right.
All right, so let's go ahead and finish up. Let's get our critical thinking card of the week. So y'all will have some logical fallacy or cognitive bias to practice your critical thinking for this week.
All right. Confirmation bias. You favor things that confirm your existing beliefs. We are primed to see and agree with ideas that fit our preconceptions and to ignore and dismiss information that conflicts with them. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Richard Feynman.
Richard Feynman is a Greek god of critical thinking as far as I'm concerned. The guy is amazing. He's the one who said that nobody really understands quantum physics.
That sounds about right.
And he was a quantum physicist, right? Who probably understood it better than anybody else. Anyway, you guys, I'm really glad this show was helpful to some of you out there. That was exactly the purpose of doing this tonight, is I want to help those out there who suffer from this condition. And I want everybody to help understand what this is about, because it's real. It's not going anywhere. It's just part of our anatomy, and some of us have to suffer from that. And if you do, well, you know, now you know a little bit more about it. So there you go. Let's go ahead and end the show. All right, guys. See ya.
Good night.